set up your camera for pictures in a museum, you'll want to set the program mode. You'll need to turn the flash off. You'll need to increase the ISO. As always, you'll need to set an appropriate white balance, and you might need to use the manual focus. Let's start by setting the camera's program mode. Turn the mode dial to P. Like the auto mode, the program mode automatically sets a shutter speed and aperture for you, but it gives you control over setting things like white balance and ISO. Since you can't use a flash in a museum, you'll want to make sure it's turned off. Press the flash button or the right navigation button right here, and use the control dial to move around. You'll want to make sure that the flash off icon is selected. Then press set or give it a second to go away. Since you're not using the flash, and this is a relatively low light situation, you might need to increase the ISO. The auto ISO can set an ISO as high as 800. If 800 ISO still doesn't provide you a fast enough shutter speed so you can handhold the camera, you'll need to increase it even more. To increase the ISO, you can either press the function button right here in the center to access the function menu. Or if your camera's ring function is set to either default or ISO, you'll be able to use the ring in the front of the camera to change the ISO setting, like this. If you need to set it to more than 800, go ahead. Otherwise, you can just leave it on auto ISO. I'll keep my ISO setting at auto. I'll just go ahead and press the function button to access the function menu. And with the ISO function selected right here, I'll just press the display button to move the orange dash right back to auto. Now, I'll go down one to the white balance function and appropriately set the white balance. Either use the control dial or the right and left navigation buttons to choose the appropriate white balance. I'll go ahead and set mine to tungsten because with my experience, most museums use tungsten lights. Go ahead and press set to escape the function menu. And now the camera is properly set up. My flash is turned off, my white balance is properly set, and I'm using an auto ISO setting, which should be fine. Go ahead and place the focusing square over the subject. Press the shutter button halfway to lock focus, then recompose the image, and press the shutter button the rest of the way to take the picture. Now, depending on the amount of light, the camera may or may not be able to lock focus. In low light situations, digital cameras have a very hard time finding a focus point. If your camera can't lock focus, you'll need to use the manual focus. Press the manual focus button or the left navigation button right here, and use the control dial to choose manual focus. Then press set or give it a second to go away. I normally use the distance gauge on the side here to roughly estimate the distance between the camera and the subject. I find that the magnified square in the center isn't quite magnified enough to see whether the image is in focus or not. So I'll set this to about 5 feet and then position myself about 5 feet from the subject. If you're more comfortable using meters and centimeters, you can set the distance units in the main menu. With the distance properly set, I'll position the camera at about the same distance from the subject. Then I'll press the shutter button halfway to lock the exposure. Once the exposure is locked, I can press the shutter button the rest of the way to take the picture. Keep in mind, if you're taking pictures of a frame and you want it to be as square as possible, you'll want to zoom in just a little bit and step a little bit further back. If you have the camera in the wide angle all the way, you might get a little bit of barrel distortion, which will distort the edges of the frame.